I looked over and he was standing in his chair. He didn't know what to do. It scared him to death. They don't want you there. My name is Robert Swain. I live in Arkansas. I'm the I guess the co-organizer of Arkansas Primate Evidence Society. I got interested in this subject when I was very small. Went to the movies to see Mysterious Monsters, and my parents wouldn't let me see Boggy Creek, but I did get snuck in to see Mysterious Monsters, and got Peter Burns' book as a paperback, and every school book that I could find in the library or buy, I bought, and so I was really interested in this from an early age. When I was in high school, I took my spring break after I could drive, and I went down to Fouke, Arkansas. I was going to do some research investigations, and I had contacted Smokey Crabtree, and when I got down there, he showed me around, and he's a little raspy voice he had. He said, "Now, if I was you, if I wanted to see one of these critters, I'd camp right here." And so I did. And so I was going to stay a couple of days, and that night, every sound was something coming to get me. Scared myself silly, and I only lasted one night, and so I tucked my tail between my legs and went home. And after that, I just became an armchair squatcher. I'd watch everything, I'd read everything, but I didn't go back out into the woods until my son was about 6 years old. And we were on a father-son camp out, and he was asleep. And about 3 in the morning, I just kept hearing these big rocks being clacked together. And we were the only people in this whole wildlife management area. There was no one else. And I laid there for a long time listening to this. And I said, what else can pick up rocks and strike them together like that? You got to have hands to do that. You got to have thumbs, opposable fingers. And so I thought I might throw my hat back in the ring. And that was around 2007, and I've not looked back. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So, describe that night. You're out there, your son is 6 years old. I'm sure you're feeling real protective of him out there in the woods and so isolated and such. But describe kind of, what that must have felt like.
Well, it was I let him pick out in this wildlife management area that's south of Helena, Arkansas, near the Mississippi River. And I let him pick out where he wanted to camp, and he selected on a place called Alligator Lake. And I was not thinking Bigfoot at all, not at all. And so we had a good time hiking around. We found turtle shells stacked up, and I thought, well, that's weird. But I had didn't even put two and two together there. And that night, when the rock clacks started happening, I thought, what can do that? And then I started thinking, well, this is the Mississippi Delta. Where are they getting rocks? Because this is all just mud down here, and trees. And we got up the next morning and started driving around, and we found where they had dumped truckloads of huge rocks about the size of a softball or a cantaloupe to fix the delta, the road there, and the berm. And I said, well, there's your rocks right there. I didn't even think about getting out and looking for footprints or anything. I was just so new at this whole idea of research and looking for evidence. But that was it. The rock clacks lasted about 30 minutes while I was laying there, and he slept through it. And you could hear it, that distinct rock on rock clack, and it would just echo. And so it had to be fairly close to us, but not just right up on us.
Did you notice any structures around or anything like that while you were there camping?
No, no, not then. I found structures since then. I found huge tree structures. I think I found a nesting site close to Lake Winona here in Arkansas, in teepees and different things like that. But that night, no, I didn't. I didn't find anything.
And you
And
just spent the one night?
yeah, just that one night with him, and then we started going uh, to different places. And he and I would he was my first research partner, and he would go out, and I used to kid him that he was my Bigfoot bait, and I just would. We would go different places, and then a couple of other people that showed interest in this joined in, and we created a small group here in Central Arkansas called Arkansas Primate Evidence Society, and that's APES for short. And we're still active here in mainly the Central Arkansas area, but all over the state.
Well, tell me about that. You bunched together. About how many members do you have?
Oh, it's a small group. It's a small group. I would say about 5 to 8 of us, and we're not very. Anybody could join if they were showed interest and would like to do this. But we're loosely attached, and we'll just say sometimes, "Hey, I'm free this weekend. Do you want to go out?" And we do, and so we just kind of banded together into this group. And our group also puts on the Arkansas Bigfoot Conference every year, and we just in October we had our 6th annual Bigfoot Conference here, and we try to keep it regional, and so we don't fly people in from California or Washington or Pennsylvania, but we keep local researchers, especially those that I've been in the woods with, and I have respect for, and I've seen them in action, and I know that they're credible, and they're forward thinking, and so those are the people I mainly get as speakers. So,
Well, that sounds good. I hope I get to come to that next year.
oh, we'd love to have you.
Yeah,
Where are you located?
Springfield, Missouri, not that
Oh,
far.
yeah, you're not far at all. Yeah,
No, not at all.
we'd love to have you come.
So tell me about this group. Yeah, you guys go out, you do actual boots on the ground research.
We do. Not we're not as much since COVID, but we're trying to get back in the saddle, if you know what I mean. That COVID thing just stopped everything, and it was really hard to reorganize and all. But we're going out, and people are contacting us with having activity around their home or their farm, and we'll investigate that as well. But we have some hot spots that we go to that we've had great audio out of, and one or two sightings. I've only had one sighting in my life, and that was in Oklahoma, but not here in Arkansas. But we uh, uh, we still are active in the field. Yes.
Well, tell me about this sighting you had in Oklahoma. That's the only visual sighting you've had.
Yes, yes, and it. I went from a like everybody says a no from a believer to a knower. I had I had well, this is kind of a long story, but I'll make it real short. I do a cartoon called Laugh Squatch, and I've done it for several years. And I have one little book published. I've got enough cartoons probably for 2 more books. But I got on the radar of the Texas group and the Oklahoma group uh, with D.W. Lee, and they invited me to their conferences to talk about Bigfoot and use my cartoons, and I did that for several years, and so ever since then, the MABRC in Oklahoma I've just been a regular speaker at their conference, and I was that weekend in I think it was 2018. I was there in that Stillwell, Oklahoma area, and we were camping out. And that's one thing I like about their symposium is that you go to the symposium and then you squatch all night and then you go to the symposium. So you're camping out, and I was driving down the road. I turned off of the paved road onto a gravel road, and it went straight for maybe a maybe a quarter mile, and then it would turn to the left, and then you would go a short distance, and you would turn to the right, and down by the river or of the creek, Lee Creek, was the campsite. And so I turned off of the paved road onto that gravel road, and at that first turn, I saw something standing there, and it turned and it looked at me, and and instead of being forward thinking and speeding up and getting as close as I could to it, I hit my brakes instead, and so I come to a stop, and this thing took two steps across the road, and it was in the trees on the left hand side, and gone. But it was after doing a recreation with some of my friends there. I think it was probably 9 feet tall. It was huge. It was enormous, and it was hunched down, and it had its arms up against its chest like it was trying to make itself look small, or maybe it was carrying something. It could have been an infant, but I couldn't see it from that distance. But it bent over, and it clenched its arms against its chest, and it took two steps across the road, and this was in broad daylight. And I think it was circumnavigating around that encampment down by the creek. And I just was at the right place at the right time. There was no skill involved there. Just I was just lucky that day. And I had been looking for in the woods for 11 years, and I'd never seen anything until that day. And so that's my only sighting. We did go back the next day, me and Jim Whitehead, and he we took photographs of him walking across, and he's a big guy. He's a really big guy, and it was it just dwarfed him. It was just so uh, there was no comparison in size with him in this thing. We did find one footprint, and it was about it was about 18 inches long. I don't know if you can see this or not. I pulled it out. This is the footprint. You can see the toes up here, and so I got a souvenir from my sighting, which I'm excited about. But that's my only sighting.
Did you find anything else or hear anything while you were in that area, that vicinity?
We that is really a hot spot, and yeah, there were audio recordings that night, and every time, not every time, anyone that says that they have activity every time they go out, I really doubt that. Uh, but a lot of times when we would camp out on Lee Creek in that area, there would be activity. Uh, so tree knocks and howls and hoots and things of that sort,
Did any
and
did any
footprints too.
did anyone else during that a period of time see where they witnessed anything?
Uh, DW had a sighting the year after that where he was on a four wheeler, and uh, the farmers in that area use four wheelers a lot, and I think these animals have equated the sound of four wheelers with food. Maybe they're bringing sweet feed or something like that to the cattle in with the four wheelers. So when they're out on the four wheelers, sometimes these things will get closer. And he did have an account where uh, he was on a trail at night with the four wheeler, and ran into two of these things. Not literally ran in, but went around a curve, and there were two of these things on the trail. But there's been several sightings in that area, and in the Ouachitas, in Arkansas and in Oklahoma. So
Yeah, I've interviewed several people from that area, and it does seem to be a very active location.
it is, and it's fun. It's fun to research where you're at, but it's fun to go other places where other people are. And every time I go, I learn something, and there's good camaraderie. And doing cartoons like I do, that's a great source of material for cartoons when you get together with other people and hear their stories. So.
I would imagine so. So, the reports that have come into you, you said there were some family reports, some that had maybe habitual um, Bigfoot on their properties. Tell me about some of those.
Well, I'm not going to give any names or locations, but the Lake Conway area, which is just south of where we live in Valonia, Arkansas, has had several sightings. In fact, when they were building the lake and they were using the big bulldozers, the equipment operator said that there were things that were standing in the tree line watching them work. And so even before the lake was there, they were there. And had just this past year had a young single lady that was living in a house by Lake Conway, and went out in her backyard and came face to face with something in her backyard about 10 feet away from her. And so they're still there. There's been times where people have been in boats out on the lake, and something waded out into the water towards them, or one father and son I remember reading about, we're on Lake Conway and saw something on the shore, and he thought it was somebody messing with him, like in a gorilla suit or something. And he had a pistol in his tackle box, and he pulled it out and he said, "Hey, I've got a gun. You better get out of here." And the thing didn't move at all. It didn't even register that what that gun was or what he was saying. So and there's a lot of people saying things cross the road at night out there. So that's a very active area, and that's only about 4, maybe 5 miles from where I'm at here in Valonia. So
The woman
it,
that saw the woman that saw the one just 10 feet away from her, that was in her yard?
Yes, our backyard at night, and and that was this past year. There's another family in the Valonia area that I have known for years and have gone to church with them, and they contacted me 2 years ago, and they're having ongoing uh, uh, activity at their house and with their horses, and it's a rural house and on an acreage, and they're finding footprints, and something is tapping on the windows at night and things of that sort, and they don't want this attention at all, and so they've put lights and cameras up all around their house to try to stop this, and they've cleaned out brushy areas closer to their home and things of that sort, but they're still having activity. So it's interesting enough. It always seems to happen when the husband goes to work, uh, and leaving the wife there by herself in the house. That's when uh, that's when they hear the tap. She hears the tapping on the windows and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. So
So
that's
the
an ongoing investigation right now.
sure. The tapping on the windows, are there footprints as evidence around that as well?
Well, yes, they found foot impressions near the house, but the better footprints have been found out in the pasture where the horses are, and they can hear at night sometimes the horses running. So it's like something is messing with the horses. Nothing has been killed or injured, but something is definitely in the pasture with them. So
Have they actually had any sightings of Bigfoot on
no,
the property?
no sightings. They one of their sons that have since married and left the house. He was letting their dog out one night, and had a rock thrown at him. So but he's never seen anything. They've never seen anything. So
Any sounds, any whoops or howls or anything like
yes,
that?
tree knocks and whoops, both of those. Yes.
Well, that would be kind of scary coming right up at your house and bothering your horses and things of that nature.
Yeah, I have a database of sightings in Arkansas, and I have, in fact, I have a book written needing to be published, but it's a chronological listing of reports of sightings in Arkansas. And when you have a chronological list like that, where do you stop? Because reports are still coming in. It's still coming in. So I've really had a problem with not writing it, but stopping it. Before it gets too big. But in Faulkner County, where I live, where Valonia is, where this family is, I've got 35 sightings in this county alone. I have over 1,000 sightings in Arkansas in this database. So uh,
Are most of them just idle, like going down the road, see one cross
yes,
or yeah.
yeah, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and some of the stories are just really exciting and would almost make good movies. I've never had an event like that. I've had some scary events, but nothing dramatic. And most of the sightings are people out fishing, seeing something on the bank, driving down the road at night, and having something cross the road in front of them, things of that sort. But there's, sometimes they'll come up to homes, maybe looking for a food source, or maybe they feel comfortable with the people there. I don't know. There's so much about these animals that we don't know. So
Yeah, and it seems like they're getting braver, or people are just talking about it more, in that are coming closer into households or making themselves seen more often. But it could just be that people are more willing to talk about it too.
and I think that there's more avenues like your podcast and other podcasts and the internet and things of that sort. And the TV shows that are out there and the documentaries. I think it's making people more comfortable to talk about this. Because back in the 70s and the 60s and even in the 50s, everybody say, don't talk about this. People think you're crazy. And they would just keep it to themselves. And some of these older tales are coming out, and people that are seeing things now, I think they are emboldened because of the avenues that we have to tell our stories, and people take you credibly when you tell a story like this. That's one of the reasons I do the conference. Is it's a little selfish on my part. I get to choose the speakers, and then I give them subjects that I want to hear about, and so I get to hear my subjects, and then all these people come, and I get to hear uh, their eyewitness accounts or what's happening around them. And so I'm collecting all of this data that's coming in every year at the conference, and so that helps out a lot, trying to figure out where to go and where the hot spots are.
For sure. So, with 1,000 reports in Arkansas, what area regionally in the Arkansas state would you say has the most activity?
Hands down, it's Miller County at Fouke, Arkansas. Yeah, in 1972, I believe, when Pierce made The Legend of Boggy Creek, there was already activity. Most of those uh, eyewitness accounts in that movie happened in the 60s. So things were happening a long time before the movie, and things were happening a long time after the movie. But I think that the movie, like I was just saying, it gave people it emboldened them to be able to say, hey, I saw something too. And so and I have to admit, I've researched in Fouke area, down there in Mercer Bayous, many times, and man, that's a squatchy place. And we found footprints, and I and have had things uh, uh, leave a handprint on my car, and just a lot of activity down there. And so by far, I think I have 168 or so sightings in Fouke, Arkansas. Now, my database, I haven't even included just people finding footprints. This is people actually putting eyes on a creature. And so that's what's in my database. It starts in 1836 and goes to the present day. I'm in my book. I'm probably going to cut it off around 2016 or something like that, just because the book's going to be too big, and maybe there's going to be a second book involved. Because I'm hoping that once the book is out, people will be coming out of the woodwork with their stories as well. So,
Well, out of this 168 sightings dating back all the way to 1836, um, tell me the most interesting or the most unusual sightings that you read about.
oh, in Falk, of course, there's the ones in the Ford House was probably the peak of the movie, and really peak of a lot of the eyewitness accounts, because it was actively trying to get into their home. Before those two couples it moved into that house, it had been abandoned for set empty for a while, and so maybe this thing had entered that house, and maybe it was coming back, and they found where something had been sleeping under the house, and so maybe it thought that was its place, and these people were there. But it's the part of that movie, and I'm sure you've seen that movie, Legend of Boggy Creek, where the hand comes through the window, and then the guy is sitting in on the commode in the bathroom, and the arm comes through the window again, and then uh, it attacks one of the people on the porch. So I think that's probably the most dramatic of all of those down in Miller County that I'm aware of. So uh,
So
I think
probably, some of the we know more about that case too, in part
right,
because of the
right,
movie. Maybe people went to a great lengths at a time when it wasn't common to really know more about maybe that story. Whereas a lot of other stories may have just gone by the wayside because no one was really doing their homework and researching it and documenting it very much.
sure. And not only was it just a story somebody told, there was evidence that they took this man that had been attacked to Texarkana, and he was in shock. There was evidence that something had actually happened that night. So uh, yeah, I think it's very well documented. Lyle Blackburn has some great books about that area there, beyond Boggy Creek, and the monster of Boggy Creek, I believe. And so, if anybody is interested in that area, I would definitely recommend getting Lyle's books for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So any other stories you can tell us about? Any other incidences that you feel like are worthy of sharing?
Oh my goodness. Oh, um, there's stories where uh, uh, people would hear something come into their home, when back in the day when you wouldn't lock your doors at night, and something would come in and eat food that it could find in the kitchen, come directly into the house. Now that's scary to me, just thinking about something coming in, and or somebody waking up, and something is standing in the doorway watching you sleep in your own home. That's kind of scary. There's a story of a man coming to see his widowed mother, and she's living alone, and she has a gun beside her bed, and he asked, "Well, what's that for?" He says, "Well, if that big monkey gets in the house again, I'm going to shoot it." And so, can you imagine being a widowed lady and something coming to your house? Uh, that's just really scary to me. Uh, like I said, most of them are campers. Most of them are people driving at night. Uh, there's I've had a couple of things happen. I could share with you that happened to me down around Falk. We used to have an annual uh, uh, get together down there. Just our group and a couple of other people would come down, and we would research down at Carter Lake. near Falk, and I would always get there a day early to make sure that our site was saved for us and nobody else was there. And I got there on a Thursday night. Everybody else was going to come in on Friday, and I just decided I was going to sleep in my car, and I do that quite a bit. And I woke up in the middle of the night around 2 o'clock, and I kept hearing uh, this, like somebody had taken a big cement block and throwing it in the water, like bloosh, really loud. And it wasn't that far from me. And there was from where I was parked, there is a road on a levee. There, one side is the lake, and the other side is marsh. And I just kept hearing this over and over, probably 30 times that night, just bloosh. And the next morning, when the sun came up, some people had starting arriving, and I was telling them about this. And we walked down to that levee, and there were huge piles of debris from the bottom of the lake, and on both sides of that road. And there were probably 20 different piles. And somebody says, "Well, maybe a raccoon did this." Well, the piles were as big as a raccoon. And we found not footprints. We couldn't find any footprints, but we found finger marks where it had dragged this debris up out of the water, and the piles were still wet uh, from that night before. And I think something was down there on that road, and it was fishing. Maybe it was. We always go in January, maybe early February, and maybe the fish got up in the shallow water close to the bank where the water had been warmer because of the sun, and it was dragging fish up. I don't know, but something made all of those sounds that night, and there was these huge piles of debris, and I still haven't uh, found an explanation for that.
Well, that is interesting. I don't think I've heard that before. But it makes sense that they might, drag from the water to get whatever might be there as a food source.
Yeah, yeah, and we have cast footprints in that area, and audio recordings in that area, and something has come close to our camp, or maybe even in our camp before. I have a friend that is a fairly big guy, and he was sleeping in the back of his pickup uh, in the sleeping bag, and it started to drizzle a little bit. So he just got a plastic tarp and threw over the top of him to keep the water off of him. And that he was asleep, and he felt something, and something uh, put its hand underneath him and lifted him up a few inches, looking at things in the back of his truck. And I've been in the woods with this guy, 100 times, and I've never seen him as shook up as he was that whole weekend. That really shook him up when something tried to lift him up, and he cleared his throat, and it stopped, and it slowly let him down, and he said you could hear it walk off. So uh, that's an interesting story.
So he was
I
sleeping in the back of he was sleeping in the back of his truck, and it was just an open bed.
Yeah, open bed, and he was in a sleeping bag, and then it started to drizzle, so he just put a tarp over the whole sleeping bag so it
Yeah.
wouldn't get wet. And something came up and was looking for things in the back of his pickup and lifted him up. Uh, so that's scary to think about that. There was somebody else that were this lady was sleeping in the cab of a pickup and had the windows down, and there were Twinkies underneath the rearview mirror in the middle of the dash, and she woke up the next morning and the Twinkies were gone. Something had reached in and taken the box of Twinkies that were there. That's kind of scary too. But I think they come, uh, and we have a uh, when we go out, we aren't trying to be stealthy and Rambo in the woods, and we sit around the fire a lot of times, and we laugh and we joke and maybe play music sometimes, and then we all get up and we go to bed. uh, that doesn't mean we're going to go to sleep, but we go to bed. And a lot of times I'll go get in my tent, and I'll lay in my sleeping bag with the headphones on, and my parabolic microphone is about 20 feet away on a tripod. And I'm laying there for a long time listening. And when things get really quiet, and when things, after a period of time, these things I think feel safe enough to come closer. And I think in the middle of the night, that's when they come in looking for a food source, or maybe just being curious. I've had a handprint on my hood, and the next morning, where something had come up and had walked between my tent and my car and placed its hand on the hood of my car, and it was about 11 inches long, the handprint. And there's no way to cast that, but I took photographs of that. So I think they come closer to you when they feel safe. And so we all go to bed, we all get real quiet, and hopefully something will come in uh, later on. Usually it's around 2 to 4 in the morning when we have activity close to our camp.
Have you ever picked up anything on a trail cam or anything like that?
No, I have not. I have a couple of trail cams, and I do put them out, but I've not had success with that. And there's a lot of debate about that too. I'm sure you've heard that. Some people think, well, maybe they can see the infrared that's coming off of those trail cameras, and if so, it would be like having a flashlight on in the woods. They could just avoid that. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. I think to have those cameras work, uh, for these animals, you're going to have to put something in the woods that's more interesting than the camera is. Deers can hear the mechanisms in the cameras. Bears can smell the petroleum in the plastic. Who knows what these things? Maybe they can smell that and hear that. Maybe they can see the infrared. So I've not had any success, and I don't know of a lot of people who have had a lot of success with trail cameras like that.
Right.
I have started putting my trail cameras on my car facing out, thinking that, well, maybe they will equate this camera as a man thing, and the car as a man thing, and so maybe I can get lucky that way. But that hasn't happened yet either. So
Mhm. What do you make of like lights and orbs and things like that around these things? Have you seen any of that down that way?
I have not ever seen an orb in the woods. I have no experience with that. I don't know. I am uh, I am a flesh and blood um, researcher. I don't. Uh, there may be something. Infrasound can cause you to be disoriented sometimes. I've seen when I was in India one time, the goats were running around in circles, and the guy said there's probably a tiger around, and that's causing that infrasound and making animals disoriented. So maybe that can make us see orbs. I don't know. I don't believe these are paranormal creatures. I don't think they go from uh, portals into different realms and things of that sort. I think they're flesh and blood animals from everything that I can see, and I've researched. They live in the woods, they eat in the woods, they act like animals, they poop in the woods. I think they're animals, and I think they're very intelligent animals, like the higher primates, maybe even smarter. But I think that's what they are, and so I've not seen orbs or lights. Uh, uh, Maybe there's something to it, and I just don't know. But I don't know how they can be associated with a flesh and blood animal. There's nothing else in zoology that would create something like that or disappear into another dimension. Everything is very straightforward when it comes to the natural laws of this planet. So I don't know.
What do you think about some of the structures and them having sort of some kind of a symbolism or a meaning or a language, associated with them, like the TPs or things like that? Have you run into any of that and been able to correlate anything with it?
Well, I found several structures in the past, and I could send you photographs if you would like those.
Sure.
But bears will mark their territories by clawing on trees. Other animals mark territories in different ways, and I I think they can mark their territory in ways like that, building sticks. If they're intelligent in all, and if you live out in the woods and all you have are rocks and sticks, that's what you're going to use. And even if there's some creativity with these things, maybe there's a reason why they stack limbs up to make teepees. The ones that I found would have been big enough for a creature to get inside, and maybe it's a blind, hunting blind, because the ones that I have found have always been close to acorn trees where deer would probably come and eat the acorns. Maybe it's some kind of blind that they make. Maybe it's a playpen for an infant. Stick it in there and sit in the doorway so it won't go anywhere. We have no idea what these things are for. The big tree structures and the X's and things of that sort. If somebody tells you this is what it means, that's something that they are. It's a hypothesis. They're just speculating that this is what it could be because we really don't know what it's for. Now, I know that if you walk down a trail and you come back and there's a tree falling over the trail, that may be pretty evident that they don't want you there, and maybe that's the sign. But I don't know. We just don't know enough about these creatures uh, to uh, to know what's going on sometimes.
Have you ever been in an area that you just felt like you needed to get out of there, but you didn't know
Oh,
why? You just, we need to leave now.
exact. Yes, I have. Uh, and I never go in the woods by myself. I've seen too many horror movies, I guess. I always want somebody else with me, and if something happens, it's really good to have somebody to corroborate what you've seen or what took place. But yeah, I've really been in places saying we don't really need to be here, and a lot of times you won't hear crickets, you won't hear birds, you won't hear other night sounds or even day sounds. If it's just dead silent, sometimes that's a sign that boy, maybe we don't need to be here. So yeah, I've had things like that happen. Uh, uh, my One of my first experiences happened in Mississippi. In the real world, I'm a minister, and I do a lot of preaching, and I was in Winnesoga, Mississippi, which is in the northeast corner of Mississippi, and I had done a gospel meeting, and this was the last night, and I was by myself, and I ate with the preacher and his wife, and we visited for a long time, and then at the time we were living down at Winona, Mississippi, and I got in my car to go home, and I loved driving the Natchez Trace. I don't know if you've ever done that before, but it's from Nashville, Tennessee, all the way to Natchez, Mississippi. It's like a national park, and it's just a parkway, and you can't drive over 45 miles an hour on the parkway, and you see all kinds of animals, and it's just almost a tunnel of trees. Just a great drive. and I got in my car and I left Winnesoga, and I got on the trace and I was driving, and it was early November, and the leaves were falling, and there was a wind, and the leaves were blowing across the road, and I was the only car out of a 2 hour drive on the trace. I met two other cars, so it was just an abandoned great drive. And I was listening to Art Bell on Coast to Coast on my radio. So everything just set up for a really spooky event. And I was driving, and all of a sudden, I see something in the road on the left hand side, and it was black, and it was down on the ground. And no, it wasn't a Bigfoot. Don't. But I, there was no other cars, so I just coasted to a stop, and it was in my headlights, and it was a Labrador dog, and it was as flat on the ground as it possibly could be. And all the time that I was there with my headlights on, it never turned its head to look at me. Its head was always looking off on that left hand side, and there was a big drop off there where the trees started. And I watched it, and it was barking, and it was snarling, and every so often it would scoot back a couple of inches, and it was always barking. And I was saying, what's it barking at? And so I rolled down the window because the glare of my dash lights were on that side window. And so I rolled it down, and I just got hit with this terrible, terrible odor. First time I'd ever smelt that. My eyes watered, a gagging reflex. I thought I'd stopped on top of a roadkill. And so I rolled my window back up, and that dog, finally, when it got into the middle of the road, it turned around, wheeled around, and it took off to the right side like it was running for its life. And I thought something was going to come across and chasing it, but nothing did. And so I waited there, and I waited there. And so finally, after a few minutes, I rolled the window back down, and that smell was gone. It was completely gone. Something had been close enough to my car that I could smell it, and it was hunting this dog. And that dog took off, and finally, after a few minutes, I got out and I walked around, and I couldn't see anything. So I got back on my car, and I went my way. But there's been several sightings in that area, the Tupelo uh, area of Mississippi. So I think I came close. That was one of my first experiences with that odor that they put off, that musky odor.
Yeah, I
Uh,
understand that. That odor is one that's it doesn't smell like anything else. You can't really, pinpoint it to
exactly.
be another odor, but it's a combination of a lot of odors that are really bad.
Yeah, somebody said, "Well, could it have been a bear? Because bears will have a musky scent." But this was no bear. This was potent, uh, like like somebody had let off a smelly bomb in my car almost. I've never had very many smells that would make my eyes water, but that one certainly did. And I've smelt that two times in other places. One time I was in my tent at night, and I smelt that. And so something had come up close to my tent. I've had something rub against the outside of my tent before. And when I first started, when I would sleep in my car because I thought, well, that was probably more protection than a tent, and I would sleep with my windows rolled up completely. And finally, I started cracking my windows, and finally, I got comfortable enough that I leave my windows down probably 6 or 8 inches. So if something wanted to reach in and touch me, it could, uh, and I could hear better. But even in my tent, I've got a great big tent that some people call it the palace, and I like a lot of room, and the top of it is all mesh. And so I can't wait to I wake up one night and something's standing over my tent looking down in my tent. But something's come close to my tent before with the rubbing and then that smell. So
It's a good indication that something is different outside, right?
yeah.
Tell me, if one of these creatures are Bigfoot is found and identified, and it is evidence enough that we all become aware that this thing exists in the woods. What do you think that's going to change in our life or world? If we find out this is a species that does exist out there.
Well, it will be the only known primate native of North America. Uh, I personally feel like that, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but I do think that the government and some industries would prefer this thing never to be found. Uh, Look what happened to the logging industry in Washington and Oregon when they put the spotted owl on an endangered species list. Thousands, tens of thousands of people lost their jobs, and companies went bankrupt, and it really threw the whole economic industry in a lot of those towns in Washington into decline because of that one little owl. What's going to happen when the only primate native of North America is found, and somebody says, we need to set aside land for it. We need to put it on an endangered species list. Where just in the Pacific Northwest? No, it's being seen all over the country. And so what's that going to do? You know, I think when government gets involved like that, it may pose a problem. I've even got one of my Laugh Squatch cartoons about Bigfoot being found, in all of the researchers like me and like you are out of a job because it's against the law to go out and look for these things anymore. So I think I think people will be excited for a little while, and then life will go on like any other in any other news. But I think some people will be validated that I did see something and it is real, and you don't have to laugh at me anymore, or I don't have to be self conscious about it anymore. But I don't know. I really think that a lot of people don't want this thing to be found. Uh, I, I I don't know. I don't know if I've answered your question or not. I'm just rambling here, but
Well, I think it's all speculative, as to what
sure,
what would happen, what could happen, and being able to classify what it really is
sure,
is another thing that just hasn't been done yet. I mean, it's not even acknowledged that it does exist, much less classified at
right,
this particular time. So lots of things I think could take place, and I'm not sure exactly what or how that would happen, of course, but I guess we'll deal with that when the time comes. The one thing I do know
yeah,
is if it is indeed identified, the mystery is kind of out of the bag, and you're
sure,
right. I mean, it's like no one's interested in a story that's already been discovered.
right, right. I would continue to look because I've since I've seen one, I want to see another. I want to see one. But personally, I think they don't need our help. They're doing fine in the woods. We can't even identify them. We can't even find them most of the time. And they're leaving very little evidence. They're very secretive. They don't want to have anything to do with us. They don't need our help. They don't need to be put on an endangered species list or some kind of government regulations. I think they're doing fine without that. And I don't know. Uh, I would hate for something to happen to the chase. Finding something is one thing. Seeking a mystery, being a monster hunter is another thing, which I kind of like.
I think that's what keeps a lot of us going is just hearing those firsthand stories and then speculating on where they might be and at what point you might run into one and what that experience might be like.
Sure, sure.
Keeps everybody going. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Oh my goodness. Uh, we've had some great audio wood knocks and calls, there's I have a 5 minute recording when we were in one of our hot spots, and there were about four of us there that night, and I made a long drawn out call, and it was we were on top of a mountain, and it kind of echoed, and a few seconds later, something that sounded just like me answered back, and we got all excited, and so I made another call, and it called back, and I went back and forth with this thing, and it seemed like it was getting louder every time I'd make a call, and then I I don't know if it was me or somebody else said this thing is coming our way, and then I started thinking, well, maybe this is a Bigfoot that's looking for a girlfriend, and I'm bringing it in, and so I don't want anything like that to happen. So it finally got fairly close to us, and a friend of mine was making some calls too, and he was in the middle of making a call, and a bug got in his mouth or in his throat, and he kind of coughed, and then all of a sudden everything went quiet, like it finally realized that something was up with this. But that recording is a really great recording of me and it going back and forth. That same area, we three of us were sitting around a little campfire in our lawn chairs and camp chairs, and uh, it was fairly cold that night, and all of a sudden 5 or 6 deer come bursting out of the trees right towards us, and they were literally jumping over the fire between our chairs. Scared us to death, but after that there was some activity in the trees, and whatever was in the trees, the deer wanted to take their chances with us and the fire than stay in the trees where it was, and so that was kind of exciting. uh, so I had a time, and I'm just rambling here. If you have if you have anything you specifically want me to address, I'll be happy to. But
Well,
uh,
the situation with the deer, that is unusual for them to bolt through that area and jump over the fire. That is very odd. But did you smell anything or hear anything
no,
else?
later on we had some uh, uh, snapping sounds, not huge logs being broken, but something breaking branches in the. So we knew something was out there, and I think the deer just didn't want to have anything to do with it. When the deer came out of the woods running, I've never seen a deer run like this, but they were not jumping up in the air like you see deer bounding. These the first two looked almost like wiener dogs. They were just running, and they were just as close to the ground as they possibly could be. I didn't even know how they were running, but they didn't. They were they were acting like they were trying to avoid something. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is an unusual posture for a deer. Like you said, just close to the ground as they could be. That is unusual.
Yeah, and bless his heart, we one of the guys that was with us, that was his first venture out in the woods with us, and I looked over, and he was standing in his chair. He he didn't know what to do, and he was it just scared him to death, and scared all of us because we weren't expecting anything like that, especially something like that racing towards us. Uh,
No, that would be scary. Yeah, and
yeah,
unexpected. It's the element of surprise probably too.
yeah, yeah. We've had one that very spot that where we used to go. We've had one sighting there. A person in our group saw something walking around the edge of the camp late when he got up to relieve himself. Uh, but there's been a lot of things happen up there. There was a time where I was using a little night vision that I had, and up on a hill not far from where our camp was, I was looking, and there were these three cedar trees setting up there. You know, you could see, and they're just black, uh, blobs up there. And the next morning we got up and we looked, and there were only two cedar trees up there. So I don't know what that third one was up there, but there were certainly three the night before. So uh, I think they're very active in that area. So
Did you happen to go up and take a look at where the three were, and then there were only two to see if maybe one was
sure.
pushed down, or if
No,
there was.
there was no tree there, and it was very rocky. So I did not see footprints there. But there's a place uh, not far, maybe 100 yards from where we were camping, that we call it the tadpole hole, and it's a big washed out area. And in the springtime, when it fills up with water, there'll be thousands of tadpoles up there in this little washed out area. And I have cast on two different occasions. I've cast footprints there, and they're the first ones were not very big. They were like 12 inches long, but they were like 5 inches wide as too. And there was a fire ring up there, and something had taken rocks from the fire ring and had stacked them up. Uh, and so I think it was maybe a juvenile that was up there. And later I cast larger prints there at that same place. But maybe they were wading in and out of that water, and he was eating those tadpoles. So that it's a very active spot there.
Hmm, interesting. Well, anything else you want to say to wrap this interview up?
Well, I do appreciate this. I would, if anybody has had an eyewitness account in Arkansas, I would like to hear from them. In my database, I'm not using names of anybody to so I can protect their privacy. I would like to hear from them, and I'd like for you to come to the conference next year. That would be
Love
good.
to. Yeah,
There'd be a lot of people for you to talk to. So
absolutely. Yes,
yeah.
I agree.